we will start off the program with tilawat of Quran, and for that we'll have Brother Dayam Aga reciting today. Please welcome him with the salawat. Allahumma
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
اللهم صل على Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil fadlihum. Brother Dayam, we will now continue the program with salam recited by Brother Daniel Aga. Please welcome him with a salawat. Allah
اللهم صل على محمد
Muhammad wa
وآل
ali Muhammad wa
صلوات
اللهم
اللهم
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
پہنچے قریب شہر مدینہ تو رو دیے پہنچے قریب شہر مدینہ تو رو دیے عابد کا دل غموں سے بھرایا تو رو دیے عابد کا دل غموں سے بھرایا تو رو دیے پہنچے قریب شہر پاؤں میں آب لے تھے چلے اور ٹہر گئے پاؤں میں آب لے تھے چلے اور ٹہر گئے روضہ رسول کا نظر آیا تو رو دیے روضہ رسول کا نظر آیا تو رو دیے پہنچے قریب شہر بیٹھے زمین پسر کو جھکائے ہوئے امام بیٹھے زمین پسر کو جھکائے ہوئے امام سایہ کیا کسی نے ردا کا تو رو دیے، سایہ کیا کسی نے ردا کا تو رو دیے، پہنچے قریب شہر عباس کی وفا کا شجاعت کا ذکر تھا، عباس کی وفا کا شجاعت کا ذکر تھا، بیٹے نے آ کے باپ کو پوچھا تو رو دیے، بیٹے نے آ کے باپ کو پوچھا تو رو دیے، پہنچے قریب شہر البنی کو بیٹے کا پرسا دیا، مگر البنی کو بیٹے کا پرسا دیا، مگر صغرا کو دے سکے نہ دلاسا تو رو دیے، صغرا کو دے سکے نہ دلاسا تو رو دیے، پہنچے قریب شہر فرماتے تھے شہید ہوئے اقربا تمام، فرماتے تھے شہید ہوئے اقربا تمام، بے شیر کو کسی نے جو پوچھا تو رو دیے، بے شیر کو کسی نے جو پوچھا تو رو पहुँचे क़रीब शहर मदीना तो रो दिए।
صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Jazakallah, brother Daniel, very well recited. Now we will continue with the series of lectures from Sheikh Mahdi Modarresi. Can we please recite aloud salawat? Allah
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Please recite salawat once again.
اللهم صل على
محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد، وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الغرر الميامين، سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن العسكري فداه أرواح العالمين. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The history of the emissaries and messengers of Imam al-Hussein to the various cities and tribes is of critical importance. And there are many reasons for that. Primarily, the many lessons that we can learn from the lives of those great men of God, individuals that were selected by Imam al-Hussein to be his personal representatives, to be his messengers to others, to invite them to join his mission, which says a lot about those individuals, and that's a discussion which I'll get to. But needless to say, getting to know these emissaries is absolutely pivotal in understanding the months and weeks and days leading up to the tragedy of Ashura. The events that transpired during that period shed light on some of the key reasons for why many people abandoned Imam al-Hussein and why some decided to join his mission and therefore be immortalized. Now, a few important points to be mentioned about these emissaries is, number one, a representative and a messenger is often a reflection of the one sending that message. And this is something that we find in how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses only the best people to be his apostles, to be the carriers of his message to the people. And it makes perfect sense, which is why the Shia school of thought, perhaps exclusively so, is the faith tradition that believes that prophets and messengers and apostles of God have to be perfect. They have to be inerrant. They have to be infallible, because not only does it require the utmost level of trustworthiness and reliability for someone to convey divine messages, but they are a reflection of those messages. So the fact that Imam al-Hussein would pick those individuals to be his messengers says a great deal about their characters. And it shows that if someone is worthy of being appointed by Imam al-Hussein, they must be of the highest possible caliber. Because after all, they are like ambassadors and personal representatives of Imam al-Hussein himself. Number two, the mission carried out by those emissaries was absolutely critical. It was, in fact, in many ways, a mission of sacrifice. And because of the critical nature of the messages that they carried and the mission that they fulfilled, it also speaks volumes about their personalities and about the fact that they held extremely lofty positions in the eyes of God. Their courage, their sense of sacrifice, all of these things were manifested by the fact that they were willing to carry out those missions and to deliver the messages of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And the fact that they ultimately were killed, the fact that they were martyred at the end of those missions also says a great deal about their personalities. The fact that they embraced death with contentment and being pleased with what God has chosen for them says that these were individuals who weren't just like me, but rather they were disciplined and trained by Imam al-Hussein himself. Number four, they had to be extremely reliable. Many of those messages that Imam al-Hussein entrusted them with were extremely classified. They were secret messages which had to do with something that even today is considered the top most important matter in the entire world, essentially, right? It had to do with the toppling of a tyrannical regime. It had to do with opposition to a tyrant as brutal and as vicious as Yazid ibn Muawiyah. So their reliability, their trustworthiness, their sense of sacrifice, their embrace of death, all of these things came together to produce those emissaries. Of course, one might argue that Imam al-Hussein had in fact given them glimpses and hints about what they were about to face, and that they would ultimately be martyred and killed in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that doesn't diminish their status. In fact, if anything, it elevates their status and it makes them more willing to embrace certain death, the kind of death that they've already been warned about. Just like Imam al-Hussein told his companions on the eve of Ashura that they are going to be martyred on the day of Ashura. In fact, the Imam went as far as to not only absolve them of their pledge of allegiance, but outright tell them to leave him, to go, to use the darkness of the night, and to leave the Imam behind so that they could at least save themselves. But of course, they chose to stand by their leader, to stay with the Imam, and they chose the eternal life over this temporary, transient, petty life in this world. The fifth and final point in the introduction about these emissaries is that as each of them embraced martyrdom and was killed, Imam al-Hussein expressed such grief in response to their death, which attests to their lofty status. And it only highlights the fact that they were so close to the heart of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Whenever the Imam was told that such and such had been killed or that they had been murdered in the city of Kufa or elsewhere, the Imam would basically start expressing grief and saying inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. In one incident, in fact, the Imam told the people that had gathered around him at that point in time, balagana naba'un fadhi', we have heard incredibly terrible news. And then he told them about the death of his emissaries. So all these points are designed to drive the point across that these were incredibly strong-willed and powerful individuals full of faith and devotion to Imam al-Hussein and to their cause of satisfying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That being said, who are the emissaries of Imam al-Hussein? I thought that we should at least dedicate 2 sessions to the companions, rather the emissaries and messengers and representatives of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, although of course there is much to be said about them, but for brevity's sake, at least 2 sessions will be dedicated to them. Who were they? The first and most famous of the emissaries was Muslim ibn Aqil. The second was Sulaiman ibn Razin. The third was Abdullah ibn Yaqtar. And the fourth and final is Qais ibn Musahhar as-Saydawi. We'll try and talk about at least 2 of them in this session and perhaps the other 2 in the next one, inshallah. Muslim ibn Aqil is so famous that I don't think there's anyone familiar with Imam al-Hussein, at least from the Shia school of thought, who doesn't recognize the name of Muslim ibn Aqil, the uncle of Imam al-Hussein, and so that makes him the cousin of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. He was the most important of these 4 messengers. Now, there are some details which many people are not aware of, which I'll try and cover, inshallah, in the short time that I have. When Muslim ibn Aqil set out for Kufa, Imam al-Hussein was still in Mecca, and he sent Muslim, his own cousin, to go and inspect the situation in Kufa. He wasn't alone when he left, however. There were others who joined him. One was Qais ibn Musahhar as-Saydawi, and we'll talk about him in a dedicated section, inshallah. The second person to accompany Muslim ibn Aqil was Abdul Rahman ibn Abdullah al-Azdi. And this individual is important because of 2 reasons. The first is that many of the messages that were sent from Kufa by the people of Kufa to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam were hand-delivered by Abdul Rahman ibn Abdullah al-Azdi. And so he was a messenger from Imam al-Hussein to the Kufans, and then from the Kufans back to Imam al-Hussein. The Imam entrusted him with that mission. And the second reason he was incredibly important is because after Muslim ibn Aqil was killed, Abdul Rahman al-Azdi joined Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and I'll get to why that happened. And why he didn't stay with Muslim ibn Aqil and why he wasn't killed with him. Instead, he went and joined Imam al-Hussein and was martyred with him on the day of Ashura. Once again, highlighting the importance of these individuals. They weren't just mailmen, they weren't just regular messengers, they were people of the highest caliber. Hence why Imam al-Hussein specifically chose them, handpicked them, and had them carry out this critical mission of his. In fact, not only was he martyred on the plains of Karbala on the day of Ashura, but in the ziyarah, the visitation attributed to our 12th Imam al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari, may God's blessings be upon him and may our lives be ransomed for him. In that visitation, there is a specific salam that the Imam himself sends upon Abdul Rahman ibn Abdullah al-Azdi in Ziyarat al-Nahiya. Now, very briefly, when Muslim ibn Aqil first went to Kufa, the place where he ended up staying was the house of Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubaid al-Thaqafi. And he was at the house of Mukhtar, and that's where many people came to see him. Many of the Kufans came to pledge their allegiance and give their vow of obedience to Imam al-Hussein by pledging allegiance to Muslim ibn Aqil while he was in the house of Mukhtar. However, when Ibn Marjana, meaning Ibn Ziyad, when he came to Kufa and took control of the city as the governor of Yazid, Muslim ibn Aqil left the house of Mukhtar, perhaps because it was compromised at that point, because people knew where he was staying, and therefore it would have been risky for him to stay there. So instead, he moved from the house of Mukhtar and went to the house of Hani ibn Urwa al-Muradi. Hani ibn Urwa, of course, was a prominent Shia, someone who was loyal to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and was ultimately killed by Ibn Ziyad. But in a series of events that transpired after the move from the house of Mukhtar to the house of Hani ibn Urwa, people obviously, when Ibn Ziyad came to Kufa, they started to disperse away from Muslim ibn Aqil, and only a select few people stayed with him. What happened was, at some point, when Muslim ibn Aqil was in hiding, obviously, because he was being hunted, he was the number one most wanted individual in the city and arguably in the entire country. What happened was, in order to pressure Muslim ibn Aqil to surrender to the authorities, the governor Ibn Ziyad, may God's eternal curses be upon him, he arrested Hani ibn Urwa. So the host of Muslim ibn Aqil was now under arrest in a measure designed to put pressure on Muslim ibn Aqil. And even though Muslims' mission and mandate in Kufa, as per the instructions given to him by Imam al-Hussein, they didn't include rising against the government. He wasn't instructed to revolt. He wasn't instructed to take up arms. But some have argued that the reason he did so was because Hani ibn Urwa was now under arrest, and that Muslim felt morally obligated to do something. He felt that Hani inevitably was going to be killed unless he did something to try and help him, which is why he tried to rise against Ibn Ziyad. However, as I said earlier, the sad, tragic, heartbreaking reality is that despite the fact that many people had given Muslim their pledges of support and allegiance, and that they would stand by him no matter what, a pledge of allegiance, a bay'ah, essentially is to promise your leader that you would die for him. Essentially, you're saying that I lay my life on my hands, and it's there for you to take. And so it's a solemn pledge. It's a pledge of honor. You're swearing your allegiance to the leader. But, as I said, many people abandoned Muslim ibn Aqil, and only a select few stayed with him, which is why Muslims' rise against Ibn Ziyad was not ultimately successful. Now, I did mention that about 30 people stayed with Muslim. It may surprise many to learn that among the 30 who did stay back with Muslim and supported him were people like Habib ibn Mudahir, Muslim ibn Awsajah, and others. And these were people that we are familiar with and we recognize as individuals who were killed in Karbala. So what happened here? Why is it that these individuals weren't killed alongside Muslim? It's because Muslim realized that this mission was not going to be successful, that he was ultimately going to be killed at the hands of the tyrant. He was, after all, outnumbered by a factor of many hundreds and even thousands. And so it was Muslim himself, this loyal companion and cousin and brother of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, who told his friends and companions to abandon him, to leave him, and to join Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. What a great personality Muslim was. It breaks my heart every time I remember the fact that he was, of course, abandoned by many people that had promised to support him and to stay back with him, but that he himself chose to send those great companions to stand with Imam al-Hussein, having realized that his was a suicide mission, that he was going to get killed. And so he wanted more people to stand by Imam al-Hussein than to be with him and to be killed in Kufa. And so he chose to be martyred on his own and to lay his life, his blessed soul, in the way of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein as a sacrifice for Imam al-Hussein. Ultimately, on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, in the year 60 after Hijrah, Muslim ibn Aqil was arrested after a war that broke out where he was all alone against hundreds and hundreds of mercenaries and troops that had come to arrest him. At some point, in fact, historians say that the leader of the troops, the contingent that had gone to arrest Muslim, having seen all the dead in their ranks, he sent a message back to Ibn Ziyad, telling him to send reinforcements. Ibn Ziyad said, there are hundreds of you, 300, 400, and there's only one of him. Why can't you arrest him? Why can't you subdue him? So he sent a response back to Ibn Ziyad saying, do you think that you have sent me to one of the grocers of Kufa? You think you have sent me to a normal person? You have sent me to the son of Aqil, to the nephew of Ali. You have sent me to a warrior from the family of Rasulullah. I need reinforcements or he's going to kill all of us. So ultimately they captured Muslim ibn Aqil. I don't want to get into his demise and his martyrdom, but what happened was that they took him alongside Hani ibn Urwa. They severed their blessed heads. They threw their bodies from the rooftop of the governor's mansion to further highlight the bloody and vicious nature of Yazid ibn Muawiyah and his cronies, to strike fear into the hearts of the Kufans, to make a lesson out of Muslim ibn Aqil and Hani ibn Urwa. They threw the bodies off of the rooftops. They took those severed blessed heads and they shipped them to Sham for Yazid to have his fun with them. And not only that, they weren't content just with this depravity and this vile nature, but they took the bodies of Muslim and Hani and they started dragging them along the streets and alleyways of Kufa, and ultimately they crucified those bodies upside down near the Grand Mosque of Kufa. Now, I want to draw your attention to something which I feel is very important and relevant to us in this day and age. The letter Imam al-Hussein sent to Kufa with Muslim ibn Aqil is worthy of examination. Now you might be thinking it's just a letter that Imam al-Hussein sent with Muslim to the people of Kufa. But when you read the letter, when you actually go through this message line by line, you will realize just how relevant it is to us in this day and age. The Imam said, and I quote, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, min Hussein ibn Ali ila al-mala'i min al-mu'mineen wal-muslimin. This is a message from Hussein ibn Ali to the masses among the believers and the Muslims. أما بعد فإن هانئا وسعيدا قدم علي بكتبكم. He said, Hani and Sa'id, they brought to me your messages of support, your letters. وكان آخر من قدم علي من رسلكم. And this is only the last batch of letters that has come from you to me. ومقالة جلكم. The Imam said, I will summarize basically what most of you are saying in these letters. أنه ليس علينا إمام, that we don't have an imam. فأقبل لعل الله أن يجمعنا بك على الهدى والحق. So come to us. Perhaps God would then join us under your banner, under your flag, the flag of guidance and truth. Now, parenthetically, let me mention one thing here. Isn't that how we, the believers in this day and age, feel vis-a-vis the Imam of our time? Isn't this basically our message to the Imam? That we don't have laysa alayna Imam, we don't have a leader. Come to us. Perhaps God will guide us. Perhaps we can join you and your mission. We are the Kufans today, brothers and sisters. We are sending these letters every time we say, Allahumma ajjil li waliyika al-faraj. Allahumma kulli waliyika al-hujjat ibn al-Hasan. so on and so forth. Every time we make dua for the reappearance of the Imam, we are telling him the exact same thing. We're saying that, come, our leader is missing. Allahumma inna nashku ilayka faqda nabiyyina wa ghaybata waliyina. Oh Allah, we are complaining to you. Our Imam isn't with us. Our Prophet isn't amongst us. This is what we say to the Imam every time we pray to God to hasten his reappearance. But is it possible? Just think about this for a moment. Is it possible that the fact we're sending all these letters, all these messages, these wishes for the Imam to come to us, is it possible that our actions don't match our words? Is it possible that if the Imam did come back, that we would abandon him and that we would betray him the way the Kufans did? I'll finish what the Imam said. The Imam then said to the people of Kufa in that message that he sent to with Muslim ibn Aqil, he said, وَقَدْ بَعَثْتُ إِلَيْكُمْ أَخِي وَابْنَ عَمِّي. I have sent to you my brother and my cousin, وَثِقَتِي مِنْ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي, and the most trustworthy from my household. وَأَمَّرْتُهُ أَنْ يَكْتُبَ إِلَيَّ بِحَالِكُمْ وَأَمْرِكُمْ وَرَأْيِكُمْ. And I have commanded him to write back to me and tell me what you are like. Tell me if your deeds match your words. Tell me if you are truthful or not. فإن كتب إلي أنه قد أجمع رأي ملئكم وذوي الفضل والحجى منكم على مثل ما قدمت علي به رسلكم. If he writes back to me and says that in fact what you are telling me matches what you are actually doing, then the Imam says that I will come to you. وَقَرَأْتُ فِي كُتُبِكُمْ أُقْدِمُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَشِيكًا. The Imam says that if that is the case, then I will come to you soon. I will come to you soon. My dear brothers and sisters, the Imam of our time says the exact same thing, albeit by using different words. The Imam says, وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَشْيَاعَنَا وَفَّقَهُمُ اللَّهُ لِطَاعَتِهِ. If only our followers, our lovers, may Allah help them, may Allah support them, if they were united in fulfilling their promise to us, لَتَعَجَّلَتْ لَهُمُ الْيُمْنُ بِلِقَائِنَا, that our meeting, our audience with them won't be delayed. Could it possibly be a problem that is within us, the fact that our Imam hasn't arrived yet? Is it because we say one thing and then you would do something entirely different? Is it because we claim to be Shia, but then when you come to our lives, when you examine our actions, when you look at the things we do, we're no different from everybody else? The Imam then said, فَلَعَمْرِي مَا الْإِمَامُ إِلَّا الْعَامِلُ بِالْكِتَابِ. A leader is one who applies the Quran, fulfills justice, وَالدَّائِنُ بِالْحَقِّ, upholds the truth, وَالْحَابِسُ نَفْسَهُ عَلَى ذَاتِ اللَّهِ. Anyway, the Imam, after Muslim went, he then sent another letter to Muslim ibn Aqil. He sent a letter to Muslim ibn Aqil, and this letter was also addressed to the people of Kufa, while Muslim was already there. The Imam said, أما بعد فقد ورد كتاب مسلم ابن عقيل يخبرني باجتماعكم على نصرنا. The Muslim had sent a letter to the Imam confirming in fact that these people are truthful, that they want to fulfill their duties to the Imam, that they want to support the Imam. So now the Imam responds back saying that I've received Muslim's letter, and in that letter he says to me that you are all united to support us. Then he says, فَانْكَمِشُوا فِي أَمْرِكُمْ فَإِنِّي قَادِمٌ فِي أَيَّامِ هَذِهِ. Since that is the case, hold tight. Allahu Akbar. Are we not taught that in the era of occultation we should be in anticipation, that we should wait for the Imam's return, that we should hold tight to the truth, to the message of the Ahlul Bayt? That is exactly what we're told. فَإِنِّي قَادِمٌ فِي أَيَّامِ هَذِهِ. May the Imam of our time also say the same thing. I am coming to you in a matter of days. بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي يَا حُجَّةَ ابْنَ الْحَسَنِ عَجَّلْ عَلَى ظُهُورِكَ. But we have to fulfill this commitment that we've made, brothers and sisters. We have to hold tight to the truth, to the message of the Ahlul Bayt, to the teachings of the Imams, alayhimus salatu wassalam. Moving on, I'll talk about the second emissary of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and this is a special emissary and a messenger of Imam al-Hussein that is often not talked about. But he is truly oppressed. Hence why I think it's important to mention him and to try and draw some lessons from him. His name was Sulaiman ibn Razin. He was Imam Hussein's ambassador, Imam Hussein's emissary to the people of Basra. Now remember, Basra is geographically situated in the south of Kufa. The distance is about 300 miles or so, maybe a little less. But Basra was historically not a Shia city. It was in fact a hotbed of antagonism towards the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, which is why Aisha went to Basra to try and mobilize the tribes there to go and fight Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Battle of the Camel. But there were, of course, pockets of people who were loyal to the Imams in the city of Basra. And so the Imam sent Sulaiman ibn Razin to Basra. But this letter, unlike the letters of Muslim ibn Aqil, wasn't addressed to all of the people of Basra. It was rather addressed to specific individuals. In fact, historians say it was addressed to Ru'asa al-Akhmas, the 5 leaders of the 5 biggest tribes in Basra. And the Imam wrote to them. Some of these tribal chiefs were companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They were companions of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. So they had passed the test of time. They had in fact been good people at some point or another. So the Imam wrote to them, in addition to a couple of other people who weren't tribal chiefs, but they were prominent individuals in Basra nonetheless. So the Imam wrote to these individuals. In that letter, listen to what the Imam says. The Imam says, قَدْ بَعَثْتُ رَسُولِي إِلَيْكُمْ بِهَذَا الْكِتَابِ. I have sent my emissary to you, emissary being Sulaiman ibn Razin. I have sent him along with this letter. وَأَنَا أَدْعُوكُمْ إِلَى كِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَسُنَّةِ نَبِيِّهِ. I am calling on to you to follow the book of Allah and the tradition of His holy messenger. فَإِنَّ السُّنَّةَ قَدْ أُمِيتَتْ. What a description this is. A description that applies to this day as well as it did back in those days. The Imam says that this prophetic tradition has died. It has been killed. وَإِنَّ الْبِدْعَةَ قَدْ أُحْيِيَتْ. And innovation has been revived. Innovation has been brought back. وَأَن تَسْمَعُوا قَوْلِي وَإِن تَسْمَعُوا قَوْلِي وَتُطِيعُوا. If you listen to my speech and obey my command, أُهْدِكُمْ سَبِيلَ الرَّشَادِ وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيْكُمْ. I shall guide you to the path of righteousness. Peace be upon you. One of the people that was addressed by the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam that Sulaiman ibn Razin went to was Yazid ibn Mas'ud al-Nahshali. Yazid ibn Mas'ud, even though his name is Yazid, he wasn't a bad person. It's not about names at the end of the day. You can have the best name in the world, like Muhammad ibn Salman, for example, the present crown prince in Saudi Arabia. His name is Muhammad, but he might as well be called Abu Sufyan or Muawiyah, right? This man's name was Yazid ibn Mas'ud al-Nahshali, as I said, but he was a good man, a loyal person to the household of the Holy Prophet. He in fact promised the Imam to support him. Not only this, but history goes into detail about how he gathered 3 of the top tribes in Basra. And he spoke to each one of those tribes individually, and he riled them up and provoked them and asked them to stand and support Imam al-Hussein and his mission. And indeed, each of those tribes responded to his call positively and promised to do whatever he asked them to do. So once he secured the allegiance of those tribes, as well as his own people, his own tribes and clans, he then wrote a letter to Imam al-Hussein saying that, Ya Aba Abdullah, you are the son of the messenger, you are the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you are my leader, you are the prince of the youth of paradise, and I am here to help you. All you have to do is tell me what I need to do, and I will be at your service. So the Imam then wrote back to him. The Imam in fact thanked him and he prayed for him. Then he mobilized the tribes. Unfortunately, however, just as he left the city of Basra, he received news that Imam al-Hussein had in fact been martyred on the plains of Karbala. Historians say, فَجَزَعَ جَزَعًا عَظِيمًا لِمَا فَاتَهُ مِن نُصْرَتِهِ. His distress, his agony, his anguish at the fact that he wasn't able to defend Imam al-Hussein and to support Abu Abdullah al-Hussein was absolutely overwhelming. Of course, these are times when now all over the world you have many Shia who would love to go to Arbaeen, who would love to visit Imam al-Hussein, but for one reason or another they're unable to do so. They are what we call masdudeen, and that's okay. The important thing is the effort. The important thing is that you try. Many people try to defend Imam al-Hussein. Many try to join his mission, but they weren't able to do so. For whatever reason, their rewards are in fact preserved for them, right? And so unfortunately, this individual, Yazid ibn Mas'ud al-Nahshali, was not able to join the Imam. One of the other people that the Imam sent Sulaiman ibn al-Razin to as a messenger was a man called Al-Mundhir ibn al-Jarud. This man, not only did he not support Imam al-Hussein, not only did he not show any hint of loyalty to Abu Abdullah, but he, as soon as Sulaiman ibn al-Razin came to him, he was the messenger. He was on a secret mission. He was there to deliver a message of Abu Abdullah. And yet, Al-Mundhir ibn Jarud arrested Sulaiman ibn al-Razin. He apprehended him and he went and hand-delivered him to the governor of Basra at the time, who was Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. Allahu Akbar, how some people are so cursed that they have no trace of mercy in their hearts, no faith in God. And the way he justified it was interesting. He said, yeah, I thought this was a trick by Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. I thought he was the one who sent Sulaiman ibn al-Razin to test me, to see whether I was with him or with Imam al-Hussein. And so I decided to just go and hand the messenger of Abu Abdullah to his mortal enemy, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. In fact, he was in bed with the Umayyads. It wasn't that. Historians tell us that his daughter was married to Ibn Marjana, and he was one of the people who accompanied Ubaydullah from Basra to Kufa. Because remember, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad was the governor of Kufa. But then Yazid told him that Hussein is coming to Kufa, so you should hurry to Kufa and include Kufa in your dominion, in your governorship. So he was initially the governor in Basra. And when he was the governor there, Sulaiman ibn al-Razin came. But this man, Al-Mundhir ibn Jarud, this treacherous, evil, wicked man, he apprehended Imam Hussein's messenger, hand-delivered him to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, who killed him as a traitor. Now, of course, inshallah, perhaps in the next session we'll talk about Abdullah ibn Yaqtar as well as Qais ibn Musahhar as-Saydawi, the other two messengers and emissaries of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. These were Imam Hussein's emissaries. They sacrificed themselves for the cause of Imam al-Hussein. They never hesitated. Fear never entered their hearts. They were there to carry out the mission of Imam al-Hussein, come what may, no matter what the end result. They were, in a way, hoping to receive the honor of martyrdom. And yet every time news of their death reached Imam al-Hussein, the Imam would gather his friends, his companions, his people, and he would perform what we call istirja'. He would say, Inna Allah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The Imam would cry. In fact, history tells us that when Muslim ibn Aqil went to Kufa, the Imam called him before he set out on his journey. فَطَوَى الْكِتَابِ, he took the letter that he had written, which I read to you. He folded that letter. He handed it over to Muslim ibn Aqil. The Imam then told him, Ya Muslim, I would like you to take this letter to the people of Kufa and to deliver my message to them and to survey them and their actions, evaluate them, see if they're being honest and truthful or not. Then the Imam hinted as to what was going to happen to Muslim. He said to him, I pray to God that aqibatu amrina, that our ultimate abode, you and I would both be martyrdom. In other words, the Imam is telling Muslim that you will not return from this journey, that you will be a martyr. ثُمَّ اعْتَنَقَا سَاعَةً وَبَكَيَا, historians say. Then they embraced for a long while and they cried. They knew this was the final farewell. They knew this was goodbye. And yet when Imam al-Hussein received news of the death of Muslim ibn Aqil and the fact that his blessed body was being dragged along the streets and alleyways of Kufa, the Imam cried. And the first thing he did was he called the daughter of Muslim, a girl known as Hamida bint Muslim. He said, where is the daughter of Muslim? They brought her Hamida. Now, you can only imagine the camp of Imam al-Hussein is surrounding him, his companions, his brothers, his family. Everyone's watching what Imam al-Hussein does. And now this little girl is being called out by herself. So all the other girls must have went along with her to Imam al-Hussein. And now everybody's watching as the Imam holds Hamida bint Muslim in his lap. He wiped her head. He kissed her. He comforted her. She looked up at her uncle Aba Abdullah al-Hussein and she said, Amma, Sayyidi Aba Abdullah, Hal halla biwalidi makruh. Has something bad happened to my father? I see you treating me the way you are known to be. You are known to treat the orphans. Ya Aba Abdullah. The Imam, instead of telling her outright what happened, he didn't want to break her heart. Instead, he said, I am your father from this day on, and my daughters will be your sisters. In other words, you will have me to comfort you. You will have my daughters to comfort you. You will have Abbas to comfort you. You will have Aliyun al-Akbar to comfort you. We're all here for you. Now I say, Ya Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. The entire family, the entire camp was there to comfort Hamida bint Muslim. And yet who was there to comfort Sukaina and Ruqayya and Fatima after you were killed, Ya Aba Abdullah? Do you know how Sakina was comforted when she cried out, Abatah, undur ilayna, undur ila ammati. Oh father, look at my aunt Zainab. There was no one to comfort her. Instead, there was an army of vile men, each of them converging to beat her and to whip her. Is this how you would comfort an orphan, let alone an orphan of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. العلي العظيم إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. إلهنا سيدنا ومولانا عجل لوليك الفرج والعافية والنصر. اجعلنا من أصحابه وأعوانه ومقوية سلطانه. إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات ومن مات على ولاية أمير المؤمنين والشهداء والعلماء والصالحين وخدمة أبي عبد الله الحسين. الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. May I kindly request Sayyid Ayan, Raza and brothers to recite the Noha for today. Please welcome them to Salah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bani Azhar binti Fatima, Hamshire Hussain, Hamshire Hussain. Bani Azhar binti Fatima, Hamshire Hussain, Hamshire Hussain. जब शाम की तरफ काफिला चला, सभी बेवकूफा ज़ैनब का आसरा. जब शाम की तरफ काफिला चला, सभी बेवकूफा ज़ैनब का आसरा. बादे हुसैन सी सलार काफिला, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. बानी अज़ार बिन्ते फातिमा, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. शबीर का गला कतरा रहा उधर, कत्ते सियाब की कल्बो जिगर इधर. शबीर का गला कतरा रहा उधर, कत्ते सियाब की कल्बो जिगर इधर. शहरा को दीन की कितने नहीं दिया, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. बानी अज़ार बिन्ते फातिमा, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. आंखों के सामने भाई जुदा हुआ, भाई के गम में भी रोने नहीं दिया. आंखों के सामने भाई जुदा हुआ, भाई के गम में भी रोने नहीं दिया. है आप फिर हुई हर गाम यूं जफा, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. बानी अज़ार बिन्ते फातिमा, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. पैगाम शाह को रुकने नहीं दिया, देती थी आप यूं खुद भी जगह जगह. पैगाम शाह को रुकने नहीं दिया, देती थी आप यूं खुद भी जगह जगह. एक काम तीर का खुद बो से ले लिया, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. बानी अज़ार बिन्ते फातिमा, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. अब्बास की बहन है आपका करम, गाजी के बाद भी जुबाई न आलम. अब्बास की बहन है आपका करम, गाजी के बाद भी जुबाई न आलम. हर घर पे ये आलम है आपकी अता, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. बानी अज़ार बिन्ते फातिमा, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. सलमान आज़मी देखो ये मौजज़ा, कातिल के घर में भी मातम किया बाबा. सलमान आज़मी देखो ये मौजज़ा, कातिल के घर में भी मातम किया बाबा. आज़ाब का बोला सदा, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. बानी अज़ार बिन्ते फातिमा, हमशीरे हुसैन, हमशीरे हुसैन. हुसैन, हुसैन, हुसैन. सलवात.
متوجہ. السلام علیکم یا ابا عبداللہ، السلام علیکم یا ابن رسول اللہ، السلام علیکم یا ابن امیر المؤمنین و سید الوصیین، السلام علیکم یا ابو الفضل العباس یا ابن امیر المؤمنین، السلام علیکم فاطمۃ الزہرا سیدۃ النساء العالمین، السلام علیکم حسن المجتبی یا ابن امیر المؤمنین. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. السلام عليك يا قريب الغرباء. السلام عليكم معين زوفا بفكرة. السلام عليكم شمس الشموس ونيس النفوس أيها المدفون برزتوس. السلام عليكم يا ابن موسى الرزاق. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم صاحب السوء الزمان الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليكم شريك القرآن. السلام عليكم مزر الإيمان سيدي أجل الله تعالى فرجه وسأل الله تعالى مخرجه وظهوره. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه وفي هذا الساعة وفي كل صائب وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزقك وتمتع فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
باقر کا لائیو اسٹریمنگ ابھی بھی آن ہے.